It started at 11:47 p.m. on New Year's Eve, with my vision tunneling and my heart hammering at 140 beats per minute. The champagne preparation table tilted. Benzodiazepines. I recognized the symptoms from NSA pharmaceutical resistance training. My knees buckled. 47 employees watched me collapse onto marble floors. My NSA training kicked in. Stay limp, control breathing, let them think the benzodiazepines had knocked me unconscious. Through slitted eyes, I saw Vanessa kneel beside me, one hand on my shoulder for the watching crowd. Her emerald dress caught the chandelier light. She turned to Brad, voice dropping to what she thought was a private whisper. Once he signs everything, it's ours. The transfer happens at midnight. I lay there, limp and silent, and heard every word. Before the revenge kicks in, tap subscribe so you never miss the next twist. I spent 8 years at NSA as a contractor specializing in network security and digital forensics. Most people heard government work and pictured cubicles and clearance badges. Accurate enough, I never corrected them. What they didn't picture was the packet analysis training, the forensic documentation protocols, the systematic approach to finding patterns in seemingly random data. I left in 2000. The bureaucracy had started wearing on me, endless approval chains for projects that needed to move faster. More than that, I'd noticed something during my last healthcare sector assessment. Medical billing systems were a disaster. Practices were using software that couldn't handle basic encryption, storing patient data in formats that made HIPAA compliance nearly impossible. I started Pritchett Medical Systems in my Boulder garage with $47,000 in savings and a conviction that healthcare deserved better security architecture. 15 years of methodical growth. No venture capital, no aggressive expansion targets. Built the software correctly, then found clients who valued that approach. Reinvested profits into better code while competitors chased quick exits. By 2005, we were serving over 200 medical practices with an $8 million valuation. At the NSA, I'd protected abstract national interests. Here, I was protecting Dr. Patel's patients in Denver, their medical records, their privacy. That mattered. I met Vanessa at a 2010 tech conference in San Francisco. She was presenting on financial systems for growing companies, wearing a tailored navy suit and speaking with the kind of confidence I associated with people who'd figured out the business side of technology. Her presentation on cash flow management was the most practical thing I'd heard all weekend. We grabbed coffee after her session. She asked what I did. I said medical billing software. She asked about our financial controls. I admitted we were still using spreadsheets for most accounting. She didn't laugh. She made suggestions. We married 6 months later. No long engagement, no elaborate proposal. She made a spreadsheet of wedding costs. I appreciated that. She understood that I worked late because I was rebuilding authentication systems, not avoiding her. I understood that her weekend consulting projects were building her professional network, not escaping our relationship. She joined as CFO in 2011. Within 3 months, she'd implemented professional financial systems that I genuinely appreciated. Real accounting software, proper expense tracking, quarterly financial reviews that helped me understand the business side I'd been neglecting. The company needed that structure. I'd outgrown the informal processes that worked when we were 5 people in a garage. Brad Kellerman joined as VP of Sales in 2011. His interview was aggressive in a way that initially put me off. Lots of talk about market penetration and relationship leverage. But he'd tripled his previous company's client base in 18 months, and our sales had plateaued. I hired him, He delivered. Within 6 months, our client roster jumped from 140 practices to 210. Brad had a talent for reading people, for knowing which doctors wanted technical specifications and which wanted reassurance. The board loved him. The sales team loved him. My home office contained 17 vintage typewriters I'd collected over the years. A 1952 Underwood with perfect carriage return resistance. A 1963 E-beam Selectric with the original typeball mechanism. I restored them with the same attention I gave to code, researching original specifications, sourcing period-correct parts, rebuilding each mechanism until it matched factory standards. Vanessa called it hoarding. I called it appreciating systems that worked through pure mechanics rather than digital abstraction. After spending days in network architectures and authentication protocols, there was something soothing about machines that couldn't be hacked, couldn't be remotely compromised, just worked through physics and precision engineering. The typewriters sat on custom shelving I'd built along the north wall. Behind that shelving, concealed by a motorized bookshelf I'd installed 3 years ago during a renovation, was my actual workspace. Climate-controlled server room, redundant backup systems, network monitoring stations, forensic analysis workstations. I'd explained the soundproofing to Vanessa as courtesy to her home office on the opposite side of the house. She'd accepted that without question. In 5 years of marriage, she never discovered what was behind that bookshelf. Old habits from NSA training. Need to know protocols, even at home. I'd never mentioned my intelligence background beyond government contractor work, and she'd never asked for details. The hidden room hummed quietly, backing up encrypted data, monitoring network traffic, maintaining the security infrastructure that protected everything I'd built. Lying on that marble floor, I traced the pattern backward. 18 months ago, Vanessa started staying late at the office for what she called strategic planning sessions with Brad. The first few times, she came home around 8. Then 9, then 10:30, she'd kiss my cheek and head straight for the shower. Different perfume. Expensive. I turned back to my laptop. The contempt started small. Comments about my lack of vision during dinner. Suggestions that I was too focused on code quality when we should be expanding faster. She'd gesture with her wine glass, wine sloshing near the rim. Brad closed 3 major accounts this quarter. He understands growth strategy. You're still debugging authentication protocols, like we're a 5-person startup. I nodded and returned to my laptop. 6 months later, she redesigned my home office, hired a minimalist consultant who removed my typewriter collection to storage, replaced my desk with a standing workstation I never used, painted the walls a clinical white that hurt my eyes under the overhead lighting. These machines are taking up space we could use for something functional. The consultant said the clutter creates psychological resistance to growth mindset. The 3 redesigns cost $73,000 over 6 months. I noticed the expenses in our joint account, but said nothing. Brad started calling me the technical guy in client meetings. Not the founder, not the CEO, the technical guy who handled back-end systems while he managed relationships. I watched it happen during a presentation to a hospital network in Denver. He gestured to me, sitting in the corner. Alan built a solid product. My job is making sure the right people know about it. The hospital administrators nodded. They looked at Brad when asking questions about our roadmap. 6 months ago, Christine Park knocked on my office door during lunch. The hallway behind her was empty, most of the team out at the food trucks. She was 27, one of our junior developers, someone I'd personally trained on secure coding practices. Brad requested administrative access to the financial systems. I logged 17 unauthorized attempts over the past 3 months. Thought you should know. I pulled up the authentication logs that night. 17 failed attempts, each one using Brad's credentials, each one trying to access accounts he had no legitimate reason to view. I started monitoring the network traffic. 2 weeks later, I found the first irregularity. A consulting expense for $200,000, paid to a company I'd never heard of. I asked Vanessa about it during our quarterly financial review. She barely looked up from her spreadsheet. Modern financial strategy. You wouldn't understand the complexity. I understood enough to start digging deeper. The NSA had trained me to find patterns in noise. I applied those techniques to our financial systems, running packet captures on all outbound transfers, analyzing authentication patterns, building timeline maps of every transaction over the past 18 months. Each consulting expense correlated to offshore deposits within 48 hours. The shell companies appeared like ghosts in the data. Cayman Islands, Singapore. Receiving transfers that corresponded exactly to our consulting expenses, our equipment purchases, our expansion costs that never resulted in actual expansion. $4.2 million over 18 months. I installed the cameras 3 months ago, upgraded our entire security system to high definition, explaining it to the facilities manager as standard modernization. Nobody questioned it. I was the technical guy. Security upgrades were expected. The footage confirmed what the financial data suggested. Vanessa and Brad in the conference room after hours, reviewing documents that never made it to board meetings. Brad's hand on her lower back. Her leaning into him. I watched it from my hidden server room, the typewriters I'd rescued from storage sitting silent on their shelves. That afternoon, Brad mentioned a plumbing emergency at his Pearl Street penthouse. Some issue with the pipes. I volunteered my security contractor friend to check for water damage while the plumber worked. Dmitry Volkov arrived at Brad's building 2 hours later with equipment that had nothing to do with water detection. The cameras went live that evening. High-definition feeds uploading to encrypted cloud storage. Time-stamped, audio and video. Dmitry had positioned them to capture faces, voices, documents. I watched Vanessa arrive at 8:47. Watched her kiss Brad in his doorway. Watched them discuss the midnight transfer they were planning, the ownership documents I'd be signing while impaired, the new corporate structure that would leave me with a consultant title and nothing else. I saved everything to redundant backups, organized the evidence by date, by transaction, by authentication attempt, built a timeline that proved systematic fraud rather than opportunistic theft. The marriage was changing. Part of me already knew what that meant. Then I waited. I needed the documentation complete before they made their move. I needed them to think I was distracted, focused on code, too technical to see the people. They were wrong about that. 4.2 million in transfers, 17 unauthorized access attempts, 47 hours of surveillance footage. All documented, all backed up. I just chose my moment. I prepared my old-fashioned at the champagne table the same way I had for 12 years. 2 ounces. Bourbon, 3 dashes bitters. 1 sugar cube muddled with a splash of water. Orange peel twisted over the glass. Citrus oils misting over the bourbon, cutting through the ballroom's perfume and cologne. 47 employees filled the ballroom, voices rising over the J's bass line. Someone from accounting laughed too loud at the bar. Blue and silver decorations matched our logo. The DJ played something upbeat that had the younger developers on the dance floor. I turned to greet Marcus Chen from accounting, Late because of childcare issues. He apologized. I waved it off, asked about his daughter's piano recital. Don't worry about it. How was the recital? She nailed the Chopin. Behind me, Vanessa moved near the bar. When I turned back, my drink sat exactly where I'd left it. Crystal highball glass, ice melting slowly, orange peel curled against the rim. I took the first sip at 11,043. By 11,045, my vision narrowed at the edges. The chandelier blurred to a bright smear. I set the glass down and gripped the table. The room tilted 5 degrees left. My heart rate spiked, pulse hammering in my ears. 140, 145, benzodiazepines. I recognized the pharmaceutical signature from NSA security briefings on chemical threats. Dosage felt high. 30 milligrams minimum, maybe 40. Speech centers shutting down. I tried to call for Vanessa, but the word came out slurred, consonants bleeding together. Christine Park noticed first. She crossed the ballroom toward me, concern on her face. I tried to wave her off. My hand moved 6 inches and stopped. The marble floor rushed up. I hit hard. Shoulder first, then hip. The impact should have hurt, but the benzodiazepines were already numbing pain receptors. Music stopped mid-song. Voices rose in alarm. ESA training kicked in through the pharmaceutical haze. The collapse had been involuntary, my body surrendering to the drug. But now I had a choice. Stay limp. Control breathing. Let them think you're unconscious. I forced my muscles to relax, let my head loll to the side, kept my eyes open just enough to see through my lashes without appearing conscious. Vanessa's emerald dress appeared in my peripheral vision. She knelt beside me, one hand on my shoulder. Warm, steady, her face arranged in perfect concern for the 47 witnesses. Brad crouched on my other side, checking my pulse at the wrist. His Rolex caught the light. Protective. 11:52. She turned her head toward Brad, voice dropping to what she thought was a private whisper. Once he signs everything in the ambulance, the midnight transfer completes our control. By 12,001, we own the accounts, the IP, the client relationships. I lay there, limp and silent, and heard every word. Someone called 911. I heard Christine's voice giving our location, describing my collapse. Footsteps approached, people backing away to give space. Vanessa's hand tightened on my shoulder. To everyone watching, it looked like desperate concern. I felt her fingers pressing into muscle, testing my awareness. I didn't react. Kept my breathing shallow and irregular, the pattern of unconsciousness. Let my eyes stay unfocused, staring at nothing. Brad stood. I'll get her coat. She'll want to ride with him. The documents are in my car, Vanessa said, still in that private whisper. Power of attorney, transfer authorizations. Everything we need. The ballroom doors banged open. 2 paramedics wheeled in a gurney, radio squawking on the lead medic's shoulder. Professional voices, asking questions, hands checking vitals, bright pinlight in my eyes that I forced myself not to track. Vanessa stood, smoothing her dress. Her voice rose, pitched for the watching crowd. Perfect panic, perfect desperation. He just collapsed. 1 minute he was fine, the next he was on the floor. Please, you have to help him. The paramedics worked efficiently. Blood pressure cuff, oxygen saturation monitor, questions about medications and medical history that Vanessa answered with perfect precision. They lifted me onto the gurney. The ballroom ceiling passed overhead, chandeliers blurring. I maintained the limp unconsciousness, let my head roll with the movement. I'm riding with him, Vanessa told the paramedics. Not a request. In the ambulance, she sat beside the gurney while they worked. IV line. Cardiac monitor. More questions. She answered everything correctly, the devoted wife who knew her husband's medical details. Then she leaned toward the EMT, taking my blood pressure. When will he be conscious enough to sign important documents? There are business matters that can't wait. The EMT's pen stopped mid-note. He glanced at his partner, then back at Vanessa, made another notation on his tablet. Timestamp 11,058. The ambulance accelerated, siren wailing. The vehicle rocked over a pothole. Equipment rattled on metal shelves. Vanessa's phone screen lit her face, blue-white in the dim interior. 11:59. 1 minute until midnight. 1 minute until the transfer she thought would make her rich. I lay still. 1 minute until midnight. 1 minute until she discovered I'd beaten her to the transfer. The cardiac monitor beeped at 92 beats per minute. I lay still under hospital blankets while Dr. Yuki Tanaka studied my chart, her reading glasses catching the ICU's dim lighting. She'd been my cardiologist for 8 years. Knew my baseline arrhythmia, the stress-related episode from 2015, my normal resting heart rate of 68. Her eyes moved from the chart to the monitors, then to my face. Your cardiac enzymes are normal, she said. EKG shows no abnormalities. This wasn't your heart. She ordered toxicology. The lab sent results at 1:15. Dr. Tanaka dismissed the night nurse and closed the privacy curtain. Pulled a chair beside my bed. Mr. Pritchett, I know you can hear me. Your pupil response was too controlled during the neurological exam. NSA training? I opened my eyes fully. Benzodiazepines, she said. 40 milligrams. 4 times therapeutic dose. Someone poisoned you deliberately. I motioned to Dr. Tanaka. My personal effects, in the bag. There's a tablet. She retrieved it for me, medical monitoring pad case, encrypted cellular connection bypassing hospital Wi-Fi. I pulled up the security footage from the gala. Vanessa at the champagne table. Small pharmacy bottle. Dissolved powder in my old-fashioned. Dr. Tanaka watched the timestamp. Tracked 11:43. Her jaw tightened. She's asked me 3 times when you'll be conscious enough to sign documents. Not about your recovery, about your legal competency. My voice came out rough from the intubation attempt in the ambulance. Document every question. Time, exact wording, your medical opinion on why a spouse would prioritize document signing over health. She made notes on her tablet. I'm limiting her visits. Patient stress management. I opened the encrypted partition on my tablet. 18 months of packet captures, authentication logs sorted by timestamp, offshore account structures mapped to transaction IDs. Brad's 17 unauthorized access attempts, each one logged with IP address and failed credential hash. Security footage from the Pearl Street penthouse, timestamped and backed up across 3 separate servers. Audio recording of Vanessa's whispered confession at the gala, waveform analyzed and verified as unaltered. Dr. Tanaka reviewed the files without speaking. When she finished, she looked at me. How long have you known? 6 months since I had proof. 18 months since I started suspecting. At 2:47, I contacted Dmitry Volkov through encrypted chat. 3-word message, package is ready. His response came in 40 seconds. Uploading to secure servers. FBI contact? I typed Special Agent Monica Reyes, White Collar Crime Division, and attached the evidence summary I'd been composing between Vanessa's visits. Forensic documentation formatted to federal prosecutorial standards. Chain of custody logs. Authentication records proving systematic fraud rather than accounting errors. Dmitry confirmed upload completion at 2:53. All files encrypted, time-stamped, formatted for legal admissibility. I called Agent Reyes at 3:09. She answered on the second ring, voice alert despite the hour. "This is Reyes. Special Agent, my name is Alan Pritchett. I'm transmitting evidence of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. The files are uploading to your secure server now." Silence for 3 seconds while she accessed the system. "Mr. Pritchett, 14 years FBI, never seen a civilian package this clean. You documented everything. I had time to prepare. The offshore accounts are active. They attempted a $4.2 million transfer at midnight. The accounts are still accessible, and the attempted murder, toxicology confirms 40 milligrams, benzodiazepines administered without my knowledge. Security footage shows my wife poisoning my drink. Audio recording captures her confession. My cardiologist is documenting her repeated questions about my legal competency instead of my medical condition." Agent Reyes was typing. I heard keyboard clicks through the phone. "I'm initiating emergency judicial review for asset freeze and arrest warrants. Judge Thornhill works holidays when cases require it. Can you remain at the hospital? I'm not going anywhere." She hung up at 3:22. Judge Margaret Thornhill reviewed the evidence package at 3:47. Dr. Tanaka was charting my vitals when Agent Reyes called back. "Judge granted emergency asset freeze on all accounts, domestic and offshore. Arrest warrants approved for Vanessa Pritchett and Brad Kellerman. Charges include wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit securities fraud, and attempted murder." The cardiac monitor beeped steadily. 90 beats per minute now. Almost normal. "We're executing the warrants at midnight," Agent Reyes said. "Exactly 24 hours after they planned to take everything from you." I ended the call and looked at the wall clock. 20 hours until the raid. Dr. Tanaka adjusted my IV line. "Your wife will be back soon. She's been visiting every 90 minutes. Let her come," I said. "I want her to think she still has time." At 11:47, I pulled up the Pearl Street penthouse feed on my tablet. Dr. Tanaka had agreed to stay through the raid, documenting my response for the medical record. The floor-to-ceiling windows showed Boulder's lights spread across the valley. Vanessa stood at the granite counter in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, hair down, makeup flawless. Brad leaned against the kitchen island in expensive casual wear, his Rolex catching the overhead lighting. A champagne bottle sat open between them. Dr. Tanaka adjusted my IV line without speaking. She'd positioned her chair to see the tablet screen, notepad ready for documentation. Brad raised his glass. To new ownership. To finally running this thing the way it should be run. Vanessa touched her glass to his. By Monday, we're announcing the leadership transition. Alan gets a nice consultant title. They drank. Brad checked his Rolex. 11:53. 7 minutes, he said. Then the transfer completes and we control everything. I watched Vanessa move to the laptop on the dining table. She typed her credentials, navigating to the offshore account interface. Brad stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder. The wall clock in my hospital room read 11:58. Vanessa clicked the transfer authorization button. Her screen refreshed. Authorization denied. Account frozen by federal order. She stared at the message. Clicked again. Same result. Again. What does that mean? Brad's voice had lost its confidence. Vanessa grabbed her phone. Her fingers shook as she dialed the bank's emergency line. This is Vanessa Pritchett. She gripped the phone tighter. Purse account number 77493. Why? She paced to the window. Why is my transfer being denied? Brad pulled out his own phone, checking something. His face drained of color. Ban. All the accounts. They're frozen. Every single one. She held up one hand, still on the phone. I need to speak to your supervisor. Now. Through the tablet speaker, I heard the bank representative's calm response. Ma'am, the accounts were frozen by federal court order at 0347 this morning. You'll need to contact the FBI. Vanessa ended the call, stood frozen at the laptop, staring at the denial message. The wall clock hit 12:00. The penthouse door crashed open. 6 FBI agents in windbreakers, weapons drawn. Commands echoed through the penthouse. Hands up. Don't move. On the ground. Special Agent Monica Reyes entered behind the tactical team. She held up 2 documents. Vanessa Pritchett, Brad Kellerman, you're under arrest. She held up the warrants. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit securities fraud. She paused. And attempted murder. Brad stepped back from the counter, hands rising. This is a mistake. Call my lawyer. You can call from federal detention. Reyes nodded to the agents. They moved in with handcuffs. An agent removed Brad's Rolex, dropping it into an evidence bag. That's mine, Brad said. His hand went to his wrist, twisted it. Purchased with embezzled funds. Evidence. Another agent unclasped Vanessa's bracelet. She jerked her wrist back. The bracelet went into an evidence bag. Serial number photographed. You can't do this. I'm the CFO of a major company. You were the CFO. The agent bagged the bracelet. Fraudulent consulting bonuses. Also, evidence. 2 agents collected the laptops from the dining table. Another photographed the champagne glasses, the open bottle, the offshore account denial message still displayed on Vanessa's screen. Reyes read them their rights in a measured voice. Vanessa demanded her lawyer 3 more times. Brad's hands shook as they cuffed him. On my phone, I pulled up the second feed. FBI agents securing the darkened Pritchett Medical Systems building, seizing financial records from Vanessa's office, boxing up documents from Brad's sales department. Dr. Tanaka made notes on her pad. The cardiac monitor beeped steadily beside my bed. 92 beats per minute. At the penthouse, agents led Vanessa and Brad toward the door, toward the vehicles that would take them to federal holding. Processing. Jumpsuit. Booking photo. Vanessa looked back at the laptop one last time, at the denial message that had destroyed 18 months of planning. Brad's Rolex sat in an evidence bag on the counter. The feed showed them being loaded into separate vehicles at 12:15. Vanessa's hair disheveled. Brad's confident posture collapsed. I closed the tablet and set it on the bedside table. Dr. Tanaka finished her notes. Your vital signs remained stable throughout. Heart rate never exceeded 95. The cardiac monitor beeped steadily. 92 beats per minute. Same as when I'd watched them celebrate. She stood, tucking the notepad into her white coat pocket. I'll add this to your medical record. Calculated response, not impulsive revenge. The wall clock read 12:23. January 2nd was 23 minutes old. 24 hours ago, their midnight transfer should have made them owners. Instead, federal custody. I reached for the pillow, settled back. The wall clock read 12:23. I closed my eyes. The cardiac monitor beeped, steady. 7 hours after the midnight raid, I watched through the video feed from my hospital bed as Vanessa and Brad were led up the granite courthouse steps at 8:45. The federal courthouse steps were worn smooth by decades of defendants and lawyers climbing toward judgment. Dr. Tanaka pulled a chair beside my bed, notepad balanced on her knee. The video conference equipment had been installed an hour ago, camera angled to show me alert and composed despite the hospital gown and IV line. The video conference showed Judge Thornhill's courtroom, wood paneling, American flag, elevated bench. Half the gallery seats were occupied. I recognized faces from Pritchett Medical Systems. Christine Park, in the third row. Marcus Chen, from accounting. Sarah Williams, who'd been with the company since the garage days. They'd come to watch. The emerald dress from the gala was gone. Vanessa entered in orange federal jumpsuit, flanked by marshals. Her auburn hair was pulled back without product, no makeup. The carefully maintained image stripped to nothing. She sat at the defense table between two court-appointed attorneys. Brad followed, beard stubble visible, the polished sales executive gone. Judge Thornhill took the bench at 9 exactly. United States versus Pritchett and Kellerman. Arraignment on federal charges of wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. The state of Colorado has also filed charges of attempted murder and conspiracy. Vanessa's attorney stood. Your Honor, these charges stem from a marital dispute that's been blown out of proportion. Special Agent Monica Reyes rose from the prosecution table. Your Honor, the evidence tells a different story. She activated the courtroom display. Security footage from the New Year's Eve gala appeared, time-stamped 11:43. Vanessa at the champagne table. Small pharmacy bottle. Dissolved powder in my old-fashioned. In the gallery, Marcus Chen leaned forward. Christine Park's hand went to her mouth. This footage shows Mrs. Pritchett administering 40 milligrams of benzodiazepines to her husband's drink. 3 times the therapeutic dose. Reyes advanced to the next exhibit. Offshore accounts. $4.2 million across 18 months. Over 18 months, the defendants transferred $4.2 million to shell companies in the Cayman Islands and Singapore. Each transfer corresponds to fraudulent consulting expenses and equipment purchases that never occurred. Brad's attorney stood. These are accounting irregularities at most. Reyes pulled up authentication logs. Mr. Kellerman made 17 unauthorized attempts to access financial systems he had no legitimate reason to view. Each attempt was documented by the company's security protocols. She played the audio next. Vanessa's whispered confession from the gala, waveform analyzed and verified. Once he signs everything, it's ours. The transfer happens at midnight. I watched Vanessa's face on the monitor. Her hands shook. The confident CFO image was breaking down. Judge Thornhill gestured to the witness stand. Dr. Tanaka, you may proceed. Dr. Tanaka stood and left my hospital room. On the courtroom feed, she entered and was sworn in. She settled into the witness chair with the same calm she brought to difficult diagnoses. Dr. Tanaka, please describe Mr. Pritchett's condition when he arrived at the hospital. Toxicology revealed 40 milligrams of benzodiazepines. The dosage was calculated, not enough to cause death, but enough to severely impair cognitive function while maintaining consciousness. What would be the purpose of such a dosage? To render someone unable to make sound decisions but physically capable of signing documents. Judge Thornhill made notes, and Mrs. Pritchett's behavior during Mr. Pritchett's treatment. She asked 3 times when he would be conscious enough to sign important documents, not about his recovery, about his legal competency. Christine Park testified next. She detailed Brad's access attempts, her documentation, her decision to report the security concerns to me rather than confront him directly. Mr. Kellerman told me he needed the access for client relationship management, but the systems he was trying to reach had nothing to do with sales. Reyes presented Brad's financial records last. $340,000 in gambling debts. Poker losses documented across 18 months, correlating exactly with the escalation of fraudulent transfers. Judge Thornhill removed her reading glasses. Bail arguments? Reyes stood. The defendants have access to offshore accounts in multiple jurisdictions. They attempted to murder the victim to facilitate their fraud. They represent extreme flight risk and ongoing danger. Vanessa's attorney tried. Mrs. Pritchett has ties to the community. Mrs. Pritchett poisoned her husband and planned to steal his company while he was incapacitated. Bail denied. Vanessa's hands shook. Brad's shoulders dropped. His head hung forward. The defendants will be remanded to federal custody pending trial. State charges of attempted murder and conspiracy will proceed in parallel. Federal charges carry 15 to 25 years. Marshals moved in with handcuffs. Vanessa looked back at the gallery as they led her out, at the employees who'd watched her rise and were now watching her fall. Outside the courthouse, Christine's voice carried through the video feed. She was talking to Marcus Chen. He built something real. They just tried to steal it. Dr. Tanaka returned to my hospital room at noon. The cardiac monitor beeped steadily, 90 beats per minute. She made final notes in my chart. Your testimony was sufficient. The evidence spoke for itself. I closed the tablet and set it on the bedside table. The courtroom was empty now. Just the American flag and the wood paneling and the elevated bench where justice had been served. The cardiac monitor beeped, steady. Enjoying my journey? A quick like and comment helps a lot. By July, 6 months after the January arraignment, I sat in my home office with the 1952 Underwood in pieces across my workbench. I removed the carriage return spring, corroded. The tension was wrong, escapement timing off by half a second. Vanessa and Brad had accepted plea deals 3 weeks ago. Their attorneys advised them the evidence was overwhelming. 12 years federal prison versus potential 25 at trial. They took the deals, full restitution of $4.2 million plus penalties. I received the divorce papers in April. Vanessa received nothing. Criminal conviction voided any community property claims. The Pearl Street penthouse was seized and sold as part of their restitution. From the company's recovered funds, I wrote 47 checks. Employee bonuses. Christine Park got $15,000. Christine Park rebuilt the engineering department now. VP of Engineering at 27. She'd earned it by reporting Brad's access attempts when staying silent would have been easier. The stock certificates arrived Tuesday. 47 envelopes, each containing shares in what they'd helped build. No single person controlled everything anymore. The typewriters were back on their shelves. 17 machines, each one restored to factory specifications. Vanessa's minimalist consultant had called them clutter. I called them reliable. My NSA work taught me that people reveal themselves through behavior patterns, even when they think they're being careful. Vanessa's mistake was simple. She thought distracted meant blind. I fitted the escapement back into position. The mechanism clicked into place with mechanical precision. No trust required, no faith in human nature, just physics and properly calibrated springs. Being underestimated was an advantage. Let them think the engineer couldn't see their obvious conspiracy.